The impossible challenge. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Assembly fell silent as Grand Weaver Zilfar of the Zinthari stepped forward, his translucent fingers extended in an elaborate gesture. The air before him shimmered, and then, as if reality itself had been persuaded to dance, threads of pure quantum energy emerged from nothingness. They wove together in a display of such complexity and beauty that the assembled delegates gasped in unison. Maya Chen, Earth's newest diplomatic representative to the Assembly, watched with undisguised fascination as the quantum threads formed intricate patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves, creating dimensions where none should exist. The display was both mesmerizing and impossible. "Behold the art of quantum threading," announced Councillor Vex, the Assembly moderator. For 12 centuries, the Zinthari have perfected this skill, which remains the pinnacle of cognitive quantum manipulation in our known galaxy. The threads pulsed with colors that Maya's human eyes couldn't fully process, yet she found herself entranced by the mathematical precision underlying the display. As a physicist specializing in quantum mechanics, she recognized the fundamental principles at work, even if the execution seemed to defy everything she'd been taught. When the demonstration ended, Zilfar's 8 eyes blinked in unison. A gesture of what Maya had learned was Zinthari satisfaction. For 6 millennia, our species has stood alone in mastery of the quantum thread. Zilfar's voice resonated through the chamber. We share this demonstration not to boast, but to remind all gathered that each species has its unique gifts. This is ours. Maya might have let it go at that. A simple demonstration of cultural achievement, if not for what happened next. A Xorlian diplomat, their crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights, rose from their seat. Most impressive, as always, Grand Weaver. Though I wonder if your species' gift, as you call it, might someday be shared with others. Zilfar's upper membrane rippled, a sign of amusement that bordered on condescension. The quantum thread responds only to the Zinthari neural pattern. Other species have attempted to learn our art. The Voldarians tried for 200 years. The Melusians for nearly 500. None succeeded. Some truths of the universe must be accepted. Certain skills belong uniquely to certain species. Something about the Zinthari's absolute certainty sparked a familiar feeling in Maya. Throughout her career, she'd encountered that same certainty from colleagues, professors, and rivals, all telling her what was obviously impossible right before she proved them wrong. Perhaps it was the jet lag from her recent arrival at the station. Perhaps it was the 6 months of diplomatic training, where she'd been repeatedly warned not to create interstellar incidents. Whatever the reason, Maya found herself standing before her brain had fully processed the decision to do so. "With respect, Grand Weaver," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline now coursing through her, "I would like to attempt to learn quantum threading." The silence that followed was profound. Then, like a wave, murmurs swept through the chamber. Councillor Vex recovered first. "Representative Chen, perhaps you misunderstand." The Grand Weaver was explaining that non-Zinthari neural structures are incompatible with quantum threading. This is not a matter of practice or skill, but of biological reality. "I understand perfectly," Maya replied, surprised by her own calm. "And I'd still like to try." Zilfar's eyes narrowed, focusing on Maya with newfound interest. "You believe you could learn in. How long would you require?" Maya considered. She needed enough time to make a genuine attempt, but not so much that failure would seem inevitable from the start. 3 days, she said finally. The chamber erupted. Laughter came from some quarters, concerned murmurs from others. The Zinthari delegation's upper membranes rippled in unanimous amusement. "Very well," Zilfar said when the commotion subsided. 3 days. You will have access to a training chamber and basic instructional materials. I admire your, how do humans say it? Your pluck, Representative Chen. As Maya returned to her seat, Earth's senior ambassador leaned toward her. "What?" Ambassador Garcia whispered urgently. "Do you think you're doing?" Maya's eyes remained fixed on the Zinthari delegation. "Making a point," she whispered back. The point that humans are reckless and don't know their limitations. Garcia hissed. Maya finally turned to face her superior. No, the point that maybe those aren't limitations at all. The training chamber provided to Maya was clearly designed for synthetic physiology. 8 meditation pads were arranged in a circle, and the walls glowed with a blue-green light that pulsed gently in patterns Maya suspected were meant to guide synthetic neural pathways. A young synthetic named Tezera had been assigned as her reluctant instructor. He stood now with his forearms crossed, his posture clearly communicating skepticism. I will demonstrate the first principle, he said, raising a slender hand. Immediately, a single thread of light appeared, hovering above his palm. What you must understand is that the thread is not created. It exists already everywhere and nowhere at once. We simply persuade it to manifest. Maya nodded, trying to reconcile this description with her understanding of quantum mechanics. Like collapsing a wave function. Your primitive physics has no terminology for this process, Tezera replied dismissively. Observe again. For hours, Maya watched as Tezera demonstrated increasingly complex manipulations, from simple thread manifestation to basic weaves that created 3-dimensional structures. He explained nothing, apparently operating under the assumption that explanation was useless to a being biologically incapable of the skill. By midday, Maya's frustration was mounting. She had tried everything, focusing her mind as she would in meditation, actively visualizing the threads, even attempting to mimic the subtle movements of Tezera's hands. Nothing had produced even the faintest glimmer of a quantum thread. Perhaps, Tezera suggested, his tone rich with false sympathy, you would like to withdraw your challenge. No one would think less of you for accepting reality. Maya ignored him, closing her eyes to think. The problem, she decided, was that she was trying to follow an instruction manual written in a language she couldn't read. The Zintheri approached quantum threading as an intuitive art, but that didn't mean it was the only approach. I need to understand the underlying principles, she said finally, not just see the effects. Tezera tilted his head. Principles? Yes. What exactly is happening, physically, when you manifest a thread? What changes are you making to the quantum field? How does your neural pattern interact with the field? These questions make no sense. One does not ask how one breathes or how one sees. One simply does it. Maya nodded slowly. For you, yes, but I need to understand the mechanism. Reluctantly, Tezera provided Maya with access to the Zintheri scientific archives, likely expecting her to be overwhelmed by the complexity. And indeed, the mathematical models describing quantum threading were unlike anything she had encountered in human physics. As the first day drew to a close, Maya had made no visible progress with creating a quantum thread. But she had begun to formulate a theory. The Zintheri manipulated quantum fields through direct neural interface. True. But the underlying physics, the actual changes happening at the quantum level, those could potentially be induced through other means. Just before she left the training chamber, Maya tried one more approach. Rather than attempting to manifest a thread by will alone, she focused on the specific quantum state that, according to her reading, should exist at the moment of thread creation. For a heartbeat, the air above her palm shimmered. It wasn't a thread. It wasn't even close to the elaborate displays Zilfar had shown, but it was something. A momentary disturbance in the quantum field that shouldn't have been possible according to everything Tezera had told her. Tezera hadn't noticed, his attention already on gathering his materials to leave. Maya didn't correct his assumption of her failure. Better, she thought, to be underestimated for now. As she walked back to her quarters, Maya's mind raced with possibilities. The Zintheri had spent centuries refining their innate ability to interact with quantum fields. But what if there was another way? A human way? She had 2 days left to find out. Redefining mastery. Word of Maya's challenge had spread throughout the Galactic Assembly Station overnight. As she made her way to the training chamber the next morning, she noticed alien delegates watching her, with expressions ranging from amusement to curiosity. A few nodded respectfully, recognizing, perhaps, the boldness of her attempt if not its potential for success. Tezra was already waiting when she arrived, along with two senior Zinthari weavers who stood silently in the corner, their upper membranes occasionally rippling in what Maya now recognized as quiet conversation. "You have observers today," she noted, setting down her tablet filled with the notes she'd made after leaving yesterday's session. "Word has reached Grand Weaver Zilthar of your persistence," Tezra replied. "He sent Weavers Nolvek and Pesme to observe. They are experts in neural pattern theory and wish to witness a human attempt." Maya nodded to the senior Zinthari. "I'm honored by your interest." Weaver Nolvek's 8 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Maya couldn't interpret. "We are simply curious about how you approach an impossible task. Human determination is well documented across the galaxy." Determination. The word hung in the air, carrying implications Maya didn't miss. Not intelligence or insight, merely stubborn persistence in the face of the impossible. The kind of determination one might observe in a particularly enthusiastic pet trying to open a locked door. Maya suppressed her irritation and focused on the day's work. She had refined her theory overnight, combing through the Zinthari archives and comparing their quantum models with human theories. What she discovered was fascinating. The fundamental mathematics underpinning quantum threading shared remarkable similarities with certain branches of human quantum mechanics, particularly those dealing with quantum entanglement and field manipulation. "I'd like to try something different today," she announced. Tezra gestured to the meditation pads. "As you wish. Though the method has remained unchanged for millennia." "Exactly," Maya agreed. "For Zinthari. But I'm not Zinthari." From her pocket, she produced a small device she had assembled in her quarters using components borrowed from Earth's diplomatic missions equipment stores. It was crude, essentially a modified quantum field scanner rewired to emit specific patterns rather than simply detect them. The senior weavers leaned forward, their interest visibly piqued. "What is this device?" Weaver Pesmai asked, speaking for the first time. "Just a tool to help me visualize what I'm attempting," Maya explained, deliberately vague. If her theory was correct, the device would help her create the precise quantum disturbance that the Zinthari neural pattern generated naturally. For the next several hours, Maya alternated between studying the device's readings when Tezra demonstrated threading and attempting her own manipulations. The senior weavers watched silently, occasionally exchanging ripples of membrane communication that Maya couldn't interpret. Near midday, her persistence was rewarded. As she activated the device and focused her mind on the mathematical model she'd constructed, a faint thread, genuine and unmistakable, flickered into existence above her palm. It lasted only seconds before dissipating, but it was undeniably real. All 3 Zinthari froze, their eye patterns fixed on the space above Maya's hand where the thread had been. "That was not possible," Tezra said finally. "Apparently it is," Maya replied, fighting to keep the triumph from her voice. "With the right approach." Weaver Nolvek moved closer, examining Maya's device with all 8 eyes. "You are using technology to artificially generate the neural pattern." "Not exactly," Maya said. "I'm using technology to help create the specific quantum disturbance that your neural pattern naturally produces. The principle is the same, but the method is different." The senior weavers exchanged rapid membrane ripples. "Show us again," Weaver Pesme demanded. Maya complied, focusing intently. This time, the thread lasted nearly 10 seconds and even began to twist according to her visualization. When it dissipated, a profound silence filled the chamber. "This is unexpected," Weaver Nolvek admitted, "though it is merely the most basic element of threading. The simplest exercise our younglings master within months." "I've had less than 2 days," Maya reminded him, "and I'm starting from zero." As the day progressed, news of Maya's limited success spread through the station. More observers appeared at the chamber's observation window. delegates from various species watching with undisguised interest as the human continued her attempts. By evening, Maya could consistently manifest single threads and even maintain them for minutes at a time. It wasn't anywhere near the mastery that Zilfar had demonstrated, but it was proof of concept. The quantum thread was not exclusive to Xanthuri biology. It was a manipulation of universal principles that could be approached through multiple methods. "You should rest," Tezra told her as the station's artificial night cycle began. "Tomorrow is your final day of the challenge." Maya nodded, exhaustion settling into her bones. "Will you be here?" "Yes," he replied, and then added, in a tone that might almost be described as respectful, "Your approach is innovative." "Incorrect, but innovative." Maya smiled tiredly. "We'll see." "Yes," he replied, and then added, in a tone that might almost be described as respectful, "Your approach is innovative." "Incorrect, but innovative." Maya smiled tiredly. "We'll see." The morning of the third day brought a surprise. When Maya arrived at the training chamber, she found not only Tezra and the senior weavers, but Grand Weaver Zilfar himself, his elaborate robes shimmering with embedded quantum threads that pulsed in complex patterns. "Representative Chen," he greeted her, his tone carefully neutral. "Word of your unconventional approach has reached the entire assembly." Maya bowed slightly. "Grand Weaver, I'm honored by your presence." "Honor is not what brings me here," Zilfar replied bluntly. "Concern does. You claim to have manifested quantum threads through technological means." "Not exactly," Maya clarified. "The technology helps me achieve the necessary quantum state, but the threading itself still requires mental focus and intention. The device is just a bridge between my neural pattern and the quantum field." Zilfar's upper membrane rippled in a pattern Maya had not seen before. "Show me." Over the next hours, Maya demonstrated everything she had mastered: single-thread manifestation, basic weaving patterns, and even a rudimentary three-dimensional structure that held its form for nearly a minute. It was primitive compared to Xanthuri mastery, but it was undeniable progress. "Remarkable," Zilfar admitted finally. "Yet there is a vast difference between these elementary exercises and true quantum threading. The final test of initiate weavers is the creation of a paradox sphere, a self-contained quantum structure that exists simultaneously in multiple states." Maya recognized the challenge for what it was: a final attempt to prove human inadequacy in the face of Xanthuri mastery. "Will you demonstrate?" Zilfar extended his hands, and the air between them shimmered. Threads of light emerged, weaving together in patterns of increasing complexity until they formed a perfect sphere that seemed to contain galaxies within it, shifting, changing, yet somehow stable in its instability. "The paradox sphere requires perfect harmony between neural intention and quantum manifestation," Zilfar explained. "It took our ancestors 4 generations to discover the principles, and each weaver requires decades to master it." Maya studied the sphere, her physicist's mind analyzing its properties. The mathematics behind it would be incredibly complex, a perfect balance of opposing quantum states held in perpetual tension. "May I try?" she asked. The assembled Xanthuri exchanged glances. Even Tezra seemed uncomfortable. To attempt a paradox sphere without proper training risks quantum instability. Weaver Nolvek cautioned. "It could be dangerous." "I understand," Maya replied, "but I think I see the principle at work." After a moment's hesitation, Zilfar nodded. "You may attempt it." Maya took a deep breath and activated her device, carefully adjusting its settings based on the readings she'd taken during Zilfar's demonstration. But as she began to focus, she realized something fundamental. The device alone wouldn't be enough for this. The paradox sphere required something more: an intuitive grasp of quantum states that went beyond mathematical models. Closing her eyes, Maya let her scientific training merge with something more uniquely human: intuition, where the Xanthuri approached quantum threading through their evolved neural interface, humans had evolved differently. Pattern recognition, creative leaps, intuitive connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. These were humanity's evolutionary advantages. She visualized the sphere not as a mathematical construct, but as a story, opposing forces finding balance, contradictions existing in harmony. As her mind held this narrative, her hands moved through the air, guiding the quantum threads that had begun to form. When she opened her eyes, a small sphere hovered between her palms. It wasn't as stable or complex as Zilfar's, but it was unmistakably a paradox sphere, containing shifting patterns that shouldn't have been able to coexist yet somehow did. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the observers beyond the window had gone still. How? Zilfar's voice was barely audible. This should not be possible. Maya maintained her focus, keeping the sphere stable. Because I'm not trying to replicate synthery threading, she explained, her voice steady despite her concentration. I'm creating human threading. Same principles, different approach. But the neural interface is just one way to interact with quantum fields. Maya finished for him. Your species evolved a direct method. Humans evolved different strengths. Pattern recognition, intuitive leaps, the ability to connect seemingly unrelated concepts. We're using the same universal physics, just accessing it differently. Is just one way to interact with quantum fields. Maya finished for him. Your species evolved a direct method. Humans evolved different strengths. Pattern recognition, intuitive leaps, the ability to connect seemingly unrelated concepts. We're using the same universal physics, just accessing it differently. As if to emphasize her point, the sphere between her hands pulsed, its patterns shifting in ways that even deviated from synthery norms, taking on structures that reflected human rather than synthery cognitive patterns. When Maya finally released the sphere, letting it dissipate into shimmering motes of light, no one spoke for several long moments. It was Tezra who broke the silence. She has satisfied the challenge, he said simply. Zilfar's eyes focused on Maya with new intensity. Indeed, and in doing so, challenged a fundamental assumption of our people. His upper membrane rippled in a pattern that Maya now recognized as thoughtful consideration. For 12 centuries, we believed quantum threading was ours alone, that others could not master it because they were less. We were wrong. Not wrong, Maya corrected gently, just limited by perspective. Your people did master quantum threading, your way. But the universe allows for multiple paths to the same destination. Later that day, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Assembly, Zilfar himself announced the results of the challenge. Delegates from 100 worlds listened in stunned silence as he described how a human, in just 3 days, had accomplished what other species had failed to do in centuries. The lesson, he concluded, is not that humans are superior, but that our assumptions about uniqueness and limitation require revision. Representative Chen did not learn synthery threading as we know it. She created a human approach to threading, one suited to human neural patterns and cognitive strengths. As Maya stood to acknowledge the assembly's applause, she caught the eye of Ambassador Garcia, who gave her a subtle nod of approval. In 3 days, Zilfar continued, a single human has opened a door that we believed permanently closed. I propose, therefore, the establishment of a new department within the Assembly, the Cognitive Diversity Initiative, to explore how different species might approach skills previously thought exclusive to others. Maya smiled as the chamber erupted in excited discussion. This was why humanity had joined the Galactic Assembly, not to prove superiority or inferiority, but to demonstrate that diversity of approach and perspective could benefit everyone. Some skills might take centuries to perfect, but sometimes all that was needed was a